Well, welcome to the December 12th meeting of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and can we get a roll call?
Chair Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Napier, Supervisor Madrone,
Present.
Mayor Burgell,
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen, Mayor Kelly,
Present.
Councilmember Orr,
Here.
PAC Member Arroyo,
Here.
PAC Member Allstrand.
Here.
Well, thank you. Our first order of business is adjournment of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board and to reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And at this time, we will take public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If anyone wants to make a public comment on a non-agenda item.
Hi, my name is Joanna Gary, and I just want to say I am acronym phobic. And HCOG is one of those acronyms, but also announcing that these meetings or hearings are happening with you.
Press the microphone. Sorry.
Okay. I've never had to do that before. My name's Joanne McGarry, and I am acronym phobic, and I really hope that at least like lawyers have to do in their briefs and things, that at the very beginning of anything you're publishing or announcing, that you lead with the actual words, and then you can refer to them by the acronyms. But when I saw some posting about come to the UTM meeting, or whatever the acronym is for unmet transit needs, UTN, please, words are important, okay? And I know bureaucrats and a lot of people get used to acronyms, but people in the public like words, or at least some of us do. So that's what I just wanted to please ask for.
Well, thank you. And I see a hand up online.
Good evening. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP. Since I believe this is Beth's last meeting, I just wanted to take the opportunity to express our appreciation and gratitude for her leadership during her tenure at HCOG, and the direction that she's taken the organization with the focus on climate and safety and equity. And going to be big shoes to fill, but hope that you can find someone who shares those values and continues to guide the organization in that same direction. Thank you.
And thank you. And I don't see any other right now.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So in the interest of our first speaker, that would be Coalition for Responsible Transportation Planning. Priorities. Thank you. Welcome.
And we now have a presentation on unmet transit needs by our contract planner.
Good evening. See how the multitasking goes with reading and clicking at the same time. Thank you. Good evening, board. My name is Michelle Nielsen. I'm the contract planner for Humboldt County Association of Governments, HCOG, and going to give a presentation on unmet transit needs this evening, and have a presentation to go over. Many of you may have seen this presentation, as I've done a number of outreach of public hearings throughout the community. So it might be a little bit of a repeat, but there's might be some new comments I might have to add to it. So all the slides that are in this slide deck have been provided to Amy, and so they can be distributed to the board and to members of the public as to make those available. What following my presentation, the ask for this evening is to open the public hearing and to receive any public comment that from folks either online or in person would like to give on unmet transit needs in the county, and then to close the public hearing. And all input is valuable. It may not be an unmet transit need, but nonetheless, that information and that input could support a future grant application for improved transit services or infrastructure. So all input is welcome. And this initial public comment period is open until December 31st. And there's some other ways you can give public comment aside from this hearing this evening. See if I can hit the right button. Oh, there we go. So this slide gives an overview of what this process is. So the Transportation Development Act provides funding for transit, and unmet transit need is a public transportation need that cannot be met, not being met by the current transportation system. This process identifies and evaluates the adequacy of existing public transportation services. And locally, the process involves public hearings like this one this evening. There is an online survey, and folks can also give comments by email or phone to the HCOG office. So unmet transit needs at a minimum are requested trips from residents who do not have access to specialized transportation or public transportation services, or it could be requested trips from residents who do not have the resources to travel to their jobs, to education, recreational opportunities, employment, medical appointments, shopping. It could be proposed transportation, specialized transportation services that are identified in the regional transportation plan, and there's sufficient broad-based community support, which means the folks who will most likely use the service on a regular basis have demonstrated support. An unmet transit need does not include improvements that are funded or scheduled for implementation. There's some that are coming online that services that HTA is implementing that would fall in that category. Minor operational improvements or changes to bus stop schedules, trips for primary or secondary school transportation, sidewalk improvements, or street road needs. So those would not be unmet transit needs. So reasonable to meet. So I always make this mistake. So the input that is received is compiled and is looked at, is this an unmet transit need? And then if it has that potential, then is it reasonable to meet? And there's criteria for that. A service must be operationally feasible and financially sustainable, meaning that the roadways are adequate and safe to operate that service. There's sufficient funding that's been identified to cover the service's marginal operating cost for at least 3 years. Some other criteria. A current one is the service must be projected to meet a minimum marginal fare box return ratio of 10% within 2 years. Kind of going back to what I said earlier, cannot compare unmet transit needs to the needs of streets and roads. And then a service that is implemented as a result of this process, it's regularly evaluated in its first years of once it's implemented to see if it meets some metrics. It's getting enough ridership. There is an expectation when a new service is launched that it's not going to be immediately, at capacity. So there is some built into that process. Or an evaluation. And both of these, the previous slide, the unmet transit needs and reasonable to meet criteria, the definitions have to comply with the Transportation Development Act, but the state law does provide a little bit of allowance for localities, the region, to develop definitions that meet local conditions, which the HCOG board has done, and they most recently revisited that. It was in December of last year. So this kind of just gives, the slide just kind of gives an overview of what we were in terms of time. So we're obviously in the public comment period that closes at the end of the year. Then we will go ahead and compile, staff will compile all of the comments that we've gotten, including the long answers on the community survey, and we'll confer with the service providers, and also then prepare a draft report to take it to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council for recommendation. And then, of course, public input on that draft document, and then ultimately bring it back to the board for adoption in about May of next year. That's just a kind of overview. So some of the known transit needs: more frequent service, earlier and later service during the weekdays, Sunday service on RTS, and later service on Friday and Saturday between Arcata and Eureka. These are heard frequently or during the process over time. So just briefly, some change, just a few slides on ridership. This slide is showing the RTS and ETS from fiscal year 2019 to 2020 to the most recent end of fiscal year, showing a gradual increase in ridership since the peak of the pandemic, affecting ridership, which is that orange box. And so showing, that ridership is improving, but has not gotten back to where ridership was pre-pandemic. And at the Eureka City Council, I was asked, so where did everybody go? Checked in with HTA, Humboldt Transit Authority, and the thought is that there's still online learning, so there's not as many students riding the bus. And also that there's still folks working remotely or maybe hybrid schedules, so that's another drop in ridership. Oops, let's see. And so this slide shows similar information, just shows it for Southern Humboldt on the far left there, Willow Creek, and dial-a-ride service. Willow Creek, as you'll see, is kind of broke the trend. Their ridership is actually above pre-pandemic, and that's because they're actually providing transportation services for high school students that reside in Willow Creek that go to school in Arcata. So that's why their ridership is increased. And Dial-A-Ride did see a slight drop in ridership in this last fiscal year. So total ridership for the last fiscal year, over 480,000 passenger trips. Just showing the similar data, just of all HTA services, just over a longer trend line. So 24% increase from 2022 to 2023, and then a change of 8% from 2023 to 2024. So gradual, still improving ridership. Arcata Mad River, similar trends, even though student ridership, or not ridership, HSU, Cal Poly enrollment has basically stayed the same. It's actually a little bit less, but their ridership is also increasing. And let me go find my notes here. So just a couple slides about recent accomplishments by HTA. They're adding hydrogen fueling station and hydrogen buses. They're developing a intermodal transit center in the city of Eureka. Were awarded a grant for $18.7 million to further expand lower emission vehicles fleet, improve information for transit riders, and increase frequency of services. And also other things that have been implemented, unified branding and fares. Fares are across all their lines. It's $2 a ride. They also have tap to pay. Inside the buses, they have implemented Flex Rider in the greater Eureka area as a pilot project. It functions as a shared rideshare service of sorts. It was let's see, it uses open spaces on spots on the dial ride buses, and riders can choose the most convenient bus stops or other approved locations for pickup and drop off points. So a little more flexibility than the traditional bus routes. In 2025, the Flex Rider program will be launched in McKinleyville due to a grant that HCOG received. It will be for McKinleyville and Arcata, just as part of a grant that was received. And then, so the North State Express is another service that's been implemented, starting the beginning of early part of this year. And they've seen ridership is over 600 since between the beginning of launch and June of this year. And it provides people can connect to other services. They can connect down in down to Santa Rosa and even the Bay Area, and going north up into Crescent City, and also into Reading, connecting with the other services. And the objective of these services and these routes is to provide similar times of service for these destinations as driving in a car, so that make it more attractive for folks and more convenient, while also still being very affordable. So in terms of opportunities to give input aside from this hearing tonight, of course we can be emailed and call the office, and folks can leave a voicemail there. And then we have an online survey in both English and Spanish, and those flyers in the buses and posted at CR and other venue social media. And so that's it in a nutshell. And I'm happy to answer any questions there may be.
Well, thank you. And is there any questions from the board? Comments?
Well, thank you for your presentation. It's always good when this comes around each year. I know we always get a lot of great input from the community. Just a couple pieces. Somewhat recently, our board talked about this concept of adequate and safe roads for transit. And one of the board members brought up that school buses go almost everywhere. And that's full of a lot of children, right? So a lot of times when we think about adequate and safe, we think only the paved roads, or only main routes. But that just really got me thinking that it really is more than that. And if the school buses can go there, transit probably could. But it comes down to ridership and a lot of other things as well. The other thing is Measure O passed, and we are so grateful to the voters in this tough financial times that they voted for almost every school bond, and Measure O, which is going to provide not only funding for our roads, which are in desperate shape, but also some funding for transit. And so I believe the way the process is going to work is that the county will be developing a system to be able to, one, work with Humboldt Transit Authority and HCOG's TAC, ultimately to this board, to provide recommendations to the county for how those monies will be spent in terms of county roads and in terms of transit. We haven't worked out any percentage basis, but it was always assumed that it would be a much smaller amount to transit than to roads, but that there would be significant funding for transit. So stay tuned. Our board over the coming year after holidays will be looking at that and working with Humboldt County Association of Governments and Humboldt Transit Authority to figure out, how to make all that fit in. So it's pretty exciting because that's kind of one of the first revenue increases in a while. Also very excited about the microtransit in McKinleyville. Part of why it doesn't have transit is because it's so sprawled out. It's hard to get the ridership to effectively run that transit. We do have a through transit, but we don't have an in-city one. But thanks to Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, they helped us get a grant. We did a study with HCOG, and that identified that maybe microtransit and some other specific things between Arcata and McKinleyville could be very valuable. So appreciate that. So just information to help fill in the analysis that will occur about these unmet transportation needs as we go further into it. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Anything from the audience? Yes.
I wanted to include a comment that I received today by phone as part of the unmet transit needs process. I urged the caller to also convey this to HCOG, but I think they just plan to call me. So I think I will convey it to you. I got two of the same type of comment in the same day. One was an email that I already forwarded about a request for more frequent, express service between McKinleyville and Arcata. And then the caller today was seeking express service between Eureka, Arcata, and McKinleyville. So, and that topic has come up quite a bit in the past, but that was another individual who called me to request that. Who identified themselves as a frequent rider of transit.
Thank you. And is there any public comment from the audience?
Hi, is this on?
Yeah.
Yes?
I think so.
Hi.
There it
Okay,
is.
once again, my name's Joanne McGarry, JM. No, I I live in Arcata. I gave up my car deliberately in May after a year of having it on non-operation. I donated it actually, and I am living car free, not car less. I am dedicated climate activist, and that is one of the reasons, but cost is another reason, and I'm still capable of walking and taking the bus. And I am being made aware of a lot of unmet transit needs in that capacity of kind of the lifestyle experimenter. And I just need to remind everyone that not everyone has a smartphone. I have a flip phone that I'm dedicated to keeping as long as I possibly can. And, you know, people keep trying to belittle me about that. But I had an incident at the bus station on Saturday where many of us, one with the smartphone, me with my flip phone, and two people without phones at all, had to wait 50 minutes for a bus that I don't yet know the story. But on a Saturday, people were late for work, late for appointments, and there was no way to get information about what was going on. And I was told, well, you know, just download the app. And I just really think equity in travel, and especially in a climate changing world and in a time where we might lose our connection to our smartphones, we need to find ways to mitigate these kinds of issues and communicate what's going on for people. All the other unmet needs that were talked about, night service, this and that, I like to go out and do things at nighttime. And if I can't find somebody to take me in their car, here's a good example. There's an event on Saturday in Scotia I really want to go to, but the people organizing that event are not promoting carpooling. They're not providing mass transit down to this thing. So I'm going to probably not go to this thing because I can't get there and back safely unless I put out my thumb, and that's not necessarily safe. So we really need to consider how all of us can be motivated to not drive cars and get on mass transit. And so events and meetings, you know, people have meetings at the Wharfinger. I have to get off the bus at the Co-op and walk to the Wharfinger through a very sketchy part of town. I can do it, but, you know, a lot of people aren't willing to do it. So you've got to think about these things. That, like, the first thing you think about is how will people be able to get there collectively and not in too many cars? So these are the kinds of things, and people of all economic levels or technology levels. So I guess that's all I want to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I see Colin's hand up.
Yeah. Hello again, Colin Fisk. We have been, for the past 9 months or so, really spending a lot of time talking to transit riders about their needs. And, you know, since A lot of folks can't make it to these meetings or don't feel comfortable in these kinds of settings. Just wanted to really briefly summarize some of the themes that we've heard. And these are things that are not surprising, and you've already heard about them. But since so many folks have brought them up to us, I just wanted to take a minute to repeat them. One is just faster service between those major population centers, which might mean more direct routes in some cases, faster connections, more frequency, et cetera, but just being able to get more quickly between those major centers like McKinleyville, Arcata, Eureka, Fortuna. Another one that we've heard a lot, of course, is better weekend hours, more hours on Saturdays, and service on Sundays. It's just a lot of folks work on the weekends. A lot of folks have medical appointments and other important activities on the weekends that are just not accessible if they are relying on transit. And then the last thing is, again, just greater frequency, especially during the heaviest travel times. Those long gaps between buses limit people's options and sometimes leave people kind of stranded. And so more frequent service just makes it more reliable, better service for people who already ride, and more attractive certainly for people who don't ride very much. So again, you've heard all those things before, but I just want to really emphasize that those are very common themes that we hear when talking to riders throughout the system, and hope that those things get priority when it comes to funding. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we open a public hearing? That constitutes it? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that a big part of the success of the Willow Creek route, which was the one that's really passed pre-pandemic numbers, was the cooperation with the tribes. Hoopa and Yurok stepped up to help be a part of that system of bringing in people from all the way up in Wichipec and even downriver into Willow Creek in the morning and in the evening back home. And that's added to the ridership, as you said, with Arcata High School. But it was a really neat partnership that, the pandemic kind of killed off what was going on out there, the Klamath Trinity system, and the tribes stepped up. And so I really appreciate that effort on their part.
Thank you. And thank you to the tribes. Okay. Well, we've conducted our public hearing. The public is encouraged to contact the HCOG office or our planner and look into that and make yourself known if you think you have an unmet transit need. So we'll move on now to a proclamation for our outgoing board member, Mr. Jack West. And he's 12 years as part of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board representing Trinidad. And so at this time, I'll read the proclamation honoring Councilmember Jack West for his service on the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors. Whereas Councilmember Jack West served on the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors beginning in 2013, representing the city of Trinidad. And whereas Councilmember West was dedicated to enhancing safe, multimodal transportation for all people throughout Humboldt County. And whereas Councilmember West has been a stalwart supporter of trails, cycling, and running, and has brought his passion and experience to his work with HCOG. And whereas Councilmember West worked to promote the mission statement of the Humboldt County Association of Governments to develop, operate, and maintain a well-coordinated, balanced transportation system that is safe, efficient, and provides good access to all cities, communities, and recreational facilities, and into adjoining regions. A balanced multimodal transportation system includes, but is not limited to, highway, public transit, aviation, marine, railroads, recreation, bicycle, pedestrian, and utility systems. Now, therefore, this governing body does hereby present this proclamation of appreciation to Councilmember Jack West as an expression of the board's and staff's gratitude for his dedication of service to the Humboldt County Association of Governments.
That sounded pretty impressive. I remember doing all those things. I hope you don't mind. I asked if I could say a couple of things before I slipped away. And oh, it is okay. First of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate everybody in this whole organization. This has been a real highlight to be able to process everything you guys do and all the wonderful things that are going on. So I'm all positive about what you guys have done and my appreciation of being part of this for so many years. So a couple of things that I wanted to say at the last meeting, and of course with all the strange meetings at the end of this, I could do it. So I'm going to do it now. I'm a cyclist, and I cycle all over the roads of Humboldt County. There's a couple of things that I really wanted you to be aware of, and actually a lot of it's for Caltrans because I'm hoping they'll listen. Our roadways have, especially the highways, are all on. They have either shoulders or bike lanes. Whenever there's Caltrans doing work, or anybody doing work, I shouldn't say Caltrans, but anyway, any kind of Caltrans type works, a lot of people are putting the signs right in the middle of the bike lane. And on the highways, I found that you can come up to these signs and suddenly have to veer around it onto the highway to get around because sometimes it's hard to see. So I'm requesting that those signs, that think about how they put signs on the road so that they don't interfere with the bikers so we can feel safer. But some of those big signs take up the whole lane and you can have you can do nothing except go out into the highway to do that. And I've always been talking about the shoulders being clean, and for some of the highway, they put in a lot of rocks along the sides. It's really a nice thing they do. But anybody that drives there kicks the rocks out into the highway on the shoulders. So I really would like to see more careful consideration of the roads and keeping them clean, and that's important. But the number one item, I would like to see HCOG take a little stronger way of looking out for keeping the trails clear of homeless. I've ridden on the trails. They are beautiful trails. We have some of the nicest trails anywhere. I love the Waterfront Trail. I love the Hickshari Trail. And we also have trails all over. And this is where the money comes from. And as citizens, they should not have to worry about the homeless all over the trails. The Hickshari Trail is atrocious. And there's camping all up and down the trail. They actually are so unconcerned that they actually have now tents and things right next to the trail. So as you go down the trail, it's kind of disgusting. And I used to have youth races along the Hickshari Trail, and I couldn't get parents to come out. So we had to lose a lot of kids. And it's very sad to see that happen. We can't put signs up on the Hammond Trail a lot of times because some of the homeless do not want signs on the trail. They don't want people attracted, so they go up and take the signs away. So I put the signs up, in 2 hours they're gone. So we have, that's not always true, but it's fairly common in certain places on the Hammond Trail. I would like to see HCOG take a bigger stand and state, when we're putting this much money into trails, and by the way, what you're doing is fantastic. I mean, these trails are beautiful. They're wonderful. I'm so glad HCOG and Caltrans are working together to put these things in. But I really would like to see them take a stand and say we've got to do something about the homeless so people aren't afraid to use them. And I will tell you that everybody I talk to, and including the bike shop, all say the same thing. It's just very discouraging to not feel safe on the trails or to have people walking up and down the trails that really shouldn't be there. So I'd like to see HCOG make a stronger stand, that's all, and state that if we're going to put trails in and we're going to spend taxpayers' money, that we do it correctly and keep the trails clean and neat so people want to use them. So it'd be nice to see the whole county working together to reach those goals. Again, appreciate everything. I'm sad to leave. Great people. Enjoyed all of you. So thank you for recognizing me, and thank you for being part of my life and this little bit I got to go through. All right.
Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And at this time, we come to the consent calendar, which has 2 items: approval of the meeting record for September 19th and the 21st, and the City of Ferndale's local transportation fund claim. So would anybody like to pull anything? Okay, well, can we get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? No. Well, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The consent calendar is adopted. So we'll move on to our action items. The first action item is the overall work program amendment number 2.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, this item is our second amendment for fiscal year 24-25, and it's a formal amendment which is required anytime we add work products or work elements, or we change the overall budget, and kind of all of those things are happening with this amendment. So the total budget is being revised, increased to a total of just over $5 million, and this is a nearly $700,000 increase from what it was before. And the big changes are highlighted in your staff report, but I'll go through some of them now. And one of the big ones is the inclusion of a new work element, which is work element 24. This is the Partnering Assets and Authorities for Comprehensive Transit. We made an acronym for this one, the PACT grant. And really, this is a project that will receive grant funding, and it will focus on building strong working relationships among HCOG, Humboldt Transit Authority, and other transit and mobility service providers. Will include Caltrans, local tribes, cities, and county agencies. And this is really to better connect transportation planning with land use planning. And so we've added nearly 500,000, somewhere in that ballpark, to the overall budget for that purpose. So most of this increase is coming from that. The rest of the increase has to do with some carryover that came from last fiscal year. We did have changes to benefits and administrative costs. So we have needed to increase the costs for the unfunded accrued liability through CalPERS, also some employee contributions for retirement and health insurance, as it always tends to go up. So we have adjusted for that in this amendment. And then we had to bring back in, this is kind of a long-standing project. These are kind of old funds now, these coronavirus relief response and relief supplemental appropriation funds. These are just kind of the last of our unspent funds. These are going to be passing right through HCOG, and they're to support activities related to the Tribal Pavement Management Plan. We have already used some of this funding and done other work related to all the other jurisdictions. This was specific to tribal work that needs to continue. So they're going to have access, much like all of your jurisdictions do, to a pavement management program. They already have the reports on those. Those came when we did that a couple years ago, but they'll get access to Street Saver training. This is the software that's used to really manage road systems and figure out which ones should be improved. And if we only have this much budget, you can run a scenario to say which road should come next. So we'll be doing specific training on that and some other needs that they've identified. So that is in the works, and we've got a contract for that. And it's, again, just passing right through, but we wanted to make sure we captured that in the overall work program. And then I mentioned the carryover funds. So the big one here is the staffing changes. And so this amendment does include, removing me for the remainder of the fiscal year, which is there's 2 quarters remaining. And so it does include the expectation that we would have about a quarter of an interim director, one quarter, and then the final quarter of the year, hopefully the permanent executive director would be brought on board. So based on past direction, we're looking at, or our staff is recommending that Debbie Ager be appointed to the interim director position. She was our formal fiscal administrative officer. She has agreed to come back, and so we built that into the budget that that you're reviewing. And with your direction, we would prepare an employment agreement with Debbie, and we would specify the hourly wage, the start date, and she would have a limitation to work no more than 960 hours. That's a CalPERS requirement for retired annuitants. But we would expect, based on the budget, that she'd be working a lot less than that. Really, we've budgeted for about a half-time position during that interim. My own work is, executive director work plus a lot of project management work, and that project management is kind of being parceled off between existing staff, and then also we have our contract planners on board for that. So really just needing that interim director to mostly support those true executive director functions. And I think Debbie has a lot of experience that's going to be really relevant coming up in this third quarter, which is when our draft budget is due for the next fiscal year, and those are things kind of under her purview when she was with us. So that is the recommendation on that. And then just to note also that this is amendment number 2. There will most likely be an amendment number 3. We're really just guessing, when is this permanent director going to be on board? How long will Debbie be here? So it's really our best guess. It will need some tweaking once we have, kind of the real numbers on what that negotiation looks like in terms of salary with the new director, and then also how long Debbie ends up playing that interim role. So one more adjustment to come, not at all uncommon. I think 3 amendments is pretty par for the course anyway, but that's what I would expect to see in that final amendment coming forward. So that kind of wraps up the changes. I did want to note that there's a slight discrepancy in the staff report. So it's important in that motion that's in your kind of motion box there, that has the right start date. Part of this motion, it's important to include, we're approving this budget and appointing Debbie. That kind of gives us everything we need to start, doing all the right paperwork to have her come back. And so the date of her start date would be December 21st, which is the day after my last date. We were originally thinking maybe just bump it to after the holiday season. So we wouldn't expect her to come in a whole lot during that time, but it doesn't make sense to have no executive director for any amount of time. So she can just kind of then be, on paper and on call during that until her hours start more routinely after the holiday break. So that's what I've got on that. Happy to take any questions and answer anything anybody has.
Any questions from the board or the PAC, I should say? One thing that comes to mind when you were talking about hours is I can see a scenario where there may be a time when Debbie comes in to help the new person, the new executive director, get rolling. There's a lot of things that just you don't notice until there's nobody around and you got nobody to ask.
Yeah. I think the budget would allow for that. One of the requirements that we learned doing this research is we can at no time have an executive director and an interim overlapping. So that's why it's really important that she pick up, the day after I'm done. Her and I cannot overlap at all. We're having good conversations in anticipation of that. But in terms of her technical start date, it wouldn't be until after. So I think the way, you could bring her back with a different title at that point, even as independent contractor or, some small scope. Yeah, consultant, exactly. Just as long as there's no, overlap in the titles, that's a CalPERS requirement. But yes, still those opportunities to do that information sharing.
Yeah. Nothing to, no comments, any public comment? None. Well, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the recommendation. Do you need me to read out both parts of it?
No, as presented in the staff report.
As presented in the staff report. And big thanks to Debbie for being willing to step into that role. I enjoy her and will enjoy working with her again.
I think she's really excited.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. We get a roll call?
Just
We don't need-
vote is okay.
Oh,
I think
well,
just it's fine.
motion in, We'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion passes. All right. Now we have a discussion item related to the proposed approach to the Regional Climate Action Plan, RCAP, Committee and Manager position for fiscal year 25-26.
Okay, I'm happy you guys are going to hear a lot from me tonight. So it's a good finale of doing a lot of talking on my end. So yeah, this is really to take direction. So this is listed as a discussion item rather than a formal vote. And what we're looking for is, I'm kind of going to present staff's recommended approach to supporting this climate program at HCOG. The item came before the HCOG board back in September, and we received direction to kind of further explore, could this land at HCOG? Would this be a good home for it? Certainly, I think there's, among the jurisdictions working on the Regional Climate Action Plan, I think there is support for it to land here at HCOG. And what we would do with your direction is really build it into next fiscal year's budget. And that way, this information can be taken and, as that budget will come before you in February. So it would really be, over the next couple of months that this information can be integrated into the budget and brought before you for an actual vote and decision at that time. So in terms of the timing, the Regional Climate Action Plan is the environmental impact report for that is currently being prepared. And it's anticipated that the document would be released for public review in the spring of 2025 and hopefully planned for adoption in June. So that would kind of tee it up to be perfect timing for next fiscal year, just kind of starting, ideally on July 1, we would just hit the ground running. So what I presented in the staff report was workflow considerations and then also some budget considerations of how this might work. There is some things that would need to happen in this current fiscal year for this to kind of all pull together. And so, ideally simultaneously with the adoption of the Regional Climate Action Plan at each jurisdiction, they would also be adopting whatever's needed to kind of give HCOG the authority to be this Regional Climate Action Committee. So we would need to, this year, still meet with some legal counsel to really determine what's the best path for that. So we need to do some research. Does it actually involve going back to our charter documents and making any changes, or are those broad enough that this could be addressed through an MOU or something like that? The Climate Committee, the way I see it functioning, is very similar to the way the PAC functions, right? So we have the board and we add Caltrans and we add Humboldt Transit Authority. In the case of the climate decisions, we would be adding, at minimum, it would be Humboldt Transit Authority, the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, in addition to those already on the HCOG board. And that would kind of be all the sort of major players in the Climate Action Plan. And, there's been some discussion, or I think would need further discussion, it could be appropriate to have Caltrans also serve on that climate committee as well. So it could very much be similar to the way the PAC is structured, with just, the voting when it comes to climate decisions would come to that sort of policy advisory committee. But I think that's something that would be good to sort out really this fiscal year and figure out, what would that structure look like, and, the legal, requirements in terms of the best way to memorialize that. And again, make sure we're all, in accordance with the documents that already exist, setting up our joint powers agency. We did, in some of the changes we made to Amendment 2 that you just approved, in some of those administrative costs that changed, we did bump up our budget a little bit for legal fees, anticipating that these questions would need answers, and the rest of it would just kind of come out of staff time. So the other thing that would need to be done this fiscal year is to ideally create a job description and for the climate manager position and have that ready to go. I would recommend that position be promotion only, and that's a great help to HCOG's budget for a variety of reasons, primarily because if we do it promotion only, that leaves a couple things. One, if the adoption doesn't happen just as planned, that person can just be really flexible, right, and continue doing HCOG work until the Climate Action Plan is ready to go. So it gives us that flexibility in-house. And then the other thing is that we're looking at when Stevie returns from his educational sabbatical, he would also really be qualified to be a senior planner. And so that gets really difficult to support 2 in-house senior planners, an associate planner, and, and have everybody kind of working in their own job descriptions. So having promotional only would kind of leave us in the realm of recruiting for an associate planner, which is an easier position to fill. So those are sort of my thoughts around making it promotional only. And I think it does just give some flexibility and some buffer for that first year, and just kind of helps it make sense. And if that person needs to fall back to be doing partly HCOG work, they already know how, and everything's already going in that way. So those would be the tasks that I think need to happen this fiscal year, and then launching into next, really just launching the whole program. And so that kind of brings us to the budget considerations. I've proposed really HCOG kind of sponsoring this program for the first year, and that's to really keep it simple and to kind of meet the moment and deal with the urgency. I think it takes a lot of collaboration, more time than we have really. We don't want to lose time after the momentum of this document being adopted, and then kind of spend the time figuring out, well, how are we going to fund it? And so I think having this very important regional effort be supported by HCOG, it seems appropriate to me. I will say that there's about 75% of the measures in the Regional Climate Action Plan are transportation related, very much in line with all the things we're already working on. So it does make sense to me that HCOG would always be, a partial funder of this position. But in that first year, it would also be really crucial to be coordinating with all member agencies and see what everybody is able to contribute. And I think, just at the staff level, the discussions of kind of the Regional Climate Action Plan group has been very encouraging in terms of ideas and solutions everyone has. And people do want to contribute and want their jurisdictions contributing. But there's also a lot of grant funding that can be leveraged. And so I think that is, probably a very viable long-term solution. But even grants written in that first year will likely take longer than that first year to see kind of funding rolling in from that. So, I think, task one really for this position that first year is to figure out that long-term funding plan. It's a position that could grow immensely over the years. I mean, as much grant funding as can be brought in, additional positions could be created. I think ideally, based on the Climate Action Plan document, there would be a sustainability coordinator at every jurisdiction, but that would certainly take, additional funding to pull that off. So lots of long-term goals are in there in addition to the short-term ones. But I think, again, if HCOG could sponsor this for the first year, I really feel like, all the discussions I've heard and based on that, between that and the grant funds that are out there and the work our HCOG already does in this direction, I feel really encouraged that there would be that longevity of the funding source. And I don't worry that it's like, oh, we created this and it's just going to fall apart after that first year. But it will definitely be important for that person to, have that long-term plan in place and really be working on that diligently upon arrival. The way that HCOG could sponsor this is really out of our unrestricted fund balance. This is a fund that we currently have that's about $650,000. It shows up in our audits every year. It steadily grows very slowly, but steadily. And it's really funds that have accumulated since the inception of HCOG, just kind of every year through carryover, through interest earnings. And so it's been really important for the health of our organization to have this healthy reserve. So much of what we do is grant funded and it's on a reimbursement basis. And sometimes it can take a really inordinate amount of time to get reimbursed. And so having a healthy reserve is really important. But I've, during my time here, I've kind of been keeping an eye on it and wondering at what point is it healthy and at what point is it sort of, really sort of hoarding money when we have a big need. And so I think it's appropriate that it go towards a really important regional project, and that we continue to maintain a healthy fund. But we could contribute up to $200,000 and still have a healthy reserve, still allow us to have cash flow. Not be concerned about cash flow when we have grants and we're sort of overextended until we get reimbursed, but also allow us to contribute to this really important regional priority. So that would be my recommendation of how to fund this for the first year. In the staff report, there is kind of a breakdown of what I anticipate the cost being for this position. Really, the bulk of it comes to the climate program manager salary, but there would also be there's a monitoring tool that comes the consultants who have created the regional climate action plan also will produce a monitoring tool that will allow us to more efficiently show our progress, which is important for this whole effort. And so that tool, the quote for it is about $17,000. So I think that first year that tool would be important to cover. There would be additional staff hours in addition to the program manager. Certainly there's going to be admin support and the executive director participating. So I left some budget in for that and some equipment and supplies. We might need a computer. I don't anticipate this being a huge part of the budget, but just there's always ancillary things that are needed. So that brings us to just under 200,000. So kind of matching up with what I've proposed to pull out of the unrestricted fund balance. And then I provided a couple of tables in the staff report. I did notice, I think table 3 has an error on the bottom. There's an extra total there that shouldn't be there. But really to kind of show, for fiscal year 25, 26 for next fiscal year, overall staffing costs based on assuming a full slate of staff and that amount coming out to about 750,000. And then looking at our historic staffing costs, it's really not that out of line with what we've managed to fund. And we've had some big kind of not big, but over the years it's changed depending on the staff that we've had a couple of retirements of staff that have had a lot of longevity, and they also left with quite a bit of benefits and those kinds of things. And so we've also downsized a little bit. We had I guess it was an executive assistant that retired, and we did not replace that position. So we have fluctuated somewhat over the last few years. But I just wanted to show that for less than $50,000 difference, we could pull off this position, even though the cost is much greater. Again, to give some confidence that I think there's some sustainability here for this position, and that, we're not going to find ourselves a year from now wondering, how will we maintain? I think that it works. So that's really what I wanted to share about that. Again, we're looking for feedback tonight, and whatever we hear about this plan or tweaks to it or concerns will be passed on to staff that will be continuing this effort and really built into that next overall work program for next fiscal year. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to answer questions or take comments.
Any questions, comments? Skip.
Thank you, Beth. I think that is a good start to what we may be involved in. Would you help me with 2 things? I don't have a clear picture of how the committee might work. So if we were 6 months or more from now, and we were having a meeting, how might the meeting here look?
Great. Yeah. So it will look very cozy, partly. Now that I think, what I sort of envisioned was much like we have the PAC, we'd add a couple other voting members specific to the climate decisions. We'd sit here at our other, with our other fellow PAC members. You'll make room for them. So that's kind of how I picture it. I also picture it being a little different in that, for now, Humboldt Transit Authority and Caltrans, they come to all of our meetings, right? We always, we're a transportation agency. They're here to make transportation decisions with us. The only things that they don't really participate in are really non-transportation decisions, which is, primarily limited to staffing. Or we went, kind of down a housing rabbit hole a while back, and that's not core for transportation. So they didn't necessarily vote on those items, but they still come to every meeting. One thing I think will happen with the climate committee is that it may not be every single meeting. I think in the beginning it's likely to be, because there's going to be a lot of decisions and a lot of work to set that up. And then there's kind of built in, it may be when a grant is applied for or awarded, or some decision is needed, or a resolution. I'm not sure that it would need to happen every single month that the climate committee would convene. There are some built-in reporting requirements in the climate action plan. So how often it needs to be updated every couple years, that would come through the committee certainly. And there's some reporting that is recommended in there to come and say, again, with that reporting tool, what's the progress? So those are kind of the built-in ones that we know for sure we'd need that committee convened to make decisions about. And then in between, I think it would be, kind of milestones, grant funding needs, certain things like that. So that's how I see it. One thing that I think needs to be explored and considered is if it makes sense to have a climate TAC, a technical advisory committee, the way we have a transportation technical advisory committee. So I think that's something that really needs to be explored, if that would be valuable to the overall board and, the climate committee at the decision-making level, if they had an advisory, committee made up of staff / other interested party. I don't know what that would look like, but I think, that's fair game to look at if that's a good value to bring. So that would be another component to it, that you may be acting on recommendations of a technical committee, or not. It could all just come straight to the committee. The regional climate action plan does not specify exactly, I don't believe, how that part would look.
And what would the role of the manager be at a meeting? Are they not here?
They're here. Yeah.
Sitting with you?
Yeah. They would be sitting at the staff table. Yep. So they would, and their role, certainly at the meetings, would be to report out. And, I think probably that climate manager would take over all the presentations related to climate, with the executive director there to, offer assistance, but really would be the one presenting, and leading that effort. The job description, I think, partly is the monitoring of the regional climate action plan, and also a lot of collaboration. I mean, I think that is the cornerstone of that role, is really the regional collaboration. And I think that's why people wanted it to land here at HCOG, is because that's what we already do, is regional collaboration. And the grants we go for on a regional level, we get wonderful input and participation from each of your jurisdictions, from the public works directors and others who are willing to participate and say, yeah, we can contribute, staff in kind, sometimes cash. So it will be the climate program manager's job to kind of see those grant opportunities, figure out, what are we going to go for, and really work at that staff level to figure out the level of participation that all the member agencies can pull off.
Okay. And one more. I think there were a few statements in the report, but tell me more about the positives of promoting within.
Yeah. Well, the positives I see, on a very practical level, I think that it's useful to the HCOG budget, again, because it leaves us in a situation where we're not trying to support 2 senior planners in addition to a climate program manager. So we would have, if we had one of our planners be promoted to the climate program manager, another one either maintaining or being promoted to senior planner, we would be recruiting at that associate planner level, which I think is certainly a lighter touch on our budget. It also offers the flexibility of not bringing a whole new person on board until we're absolutely ready, because we are anticipating adoption in June, but we've also, there's been a number of delays with the climate action plan. So, I don't think anybody will be surprised if June isn't the end all be all. And so, being ready, absolutely, but then also having the flexibility to say, okay, wait, but we're not going to start that for a month. Or, that we can do the pieces that already fit with HCOG, which is a lot of it. There's a lot of these action items in the climate action plan that absolutely overlap with what we're already doing. So I think it just offers us a lot of flexibility on how we can administer the program and get started much faster than if we were going to go out to go out and recruit. Now, one other piece of that I will say is I also think that it really the jurisdictions really respect the HCOG staff. I think that they feel comfortable with either of the planners we have here fulfilling on that role. And there's a lot of social capital already built around that. And so I think there's, positive reactions to kind of floating that idea. And I think it's really a testament to just how wonderful, our planners are here at HCOG, that they're really seen as regional leaders already and could step into that role and that people would be, ready to receive them in that position.
Well, the most challenging part can be getting started. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Bedrone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Beth, for the presentation. I agree with all the pieces you're putting forth. I think it's a really good plan. As you know, we're working at the county to try and bring the completion of that plan by June or, whatever seems appropriate there. With the recent passage of Prop 4, it's certainly a good time to be bold and move towards action-oriented stuff quickly because there's significant funding related to climate action in that proposition. I think in the broadened pack that we create, it would also be important to have a representative or representatives on land use. That's where the action plan's coming from right now, actually, and then moving to HCOG probably. And appraisers, a lot of stuff happens in ordinances. And one of the things I've tried to bring forward a lot is when we create these kinds of things, there can be a lot of pushback from the community in regards to regulations. Oh, you're going to have to do this. You can't do that, et cetera. And so the more we base the recommendations on incentives, carrots, basically, rather than sticks. You need them both. But the more we have incentive-based pieces to the puzzle, the more buy-in we're going to get to the whole effort. And I would just offer some things that, the North Coast Resource Partnership, for instance, is a regional organization that involves 7 counties from Sonoma all the way up to Modoc County. And it not only includes the counties, but it includes tribes. And I think the tribes ought to really be part of this expanded pack for a lot of reasons. And the NCRP that has brought the tribes to the table is now considered by the state one of the most effective regional organizations in the state of California. And they want to deliver large sums of money to our organization to get out to the communities in regards to, for instance, water storage, water delivery, things like that. And, there's a lot of little micro pieces around distributed water storage, at the household level to make it through electricity when it outages and things. And there's a lot of ways to incentivize that, waterless toilets and other things. And these tie back into appraisers in that the incentives can be, well, if you're doing these kinds of things, it's not considered a property improvement because it's helping with the climate action plan. Like water storage, for instance. Right now, if you do more water storage, it gets taxed as a property improvement, which is a disincentive. So that's just one example, and I think there's a lot of things like that by adding land use, appraisers, and tribes into the puzzle, I think we'll get a broader perspective on solutions and things like that. So I just wanted to share those couple of thoughts. Obviously, multimodal support, trail support, and all of this, which is a piece of transportation. I agree with you. The bulk of it, 75%, as you mentioned, is transportation related because that's where we have our biggest emissions. And as a rural county, there's a challenge there. But truly, once the Bay Trail is done next summer, we're going to see a lot more people utilizing that to get back and forth between Arcata and Eureka. And that is a piece of transportation planning, as we all know. So anyway, just a couple thoughts there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other Any public comment?
Hi, my name is Joanne McGarry, and I say my name all the time so that people watching know who I am. So it's not because you don't remember. So I was going to try and catch the 6:15, but I guess I'll wait for the 6:45 bus back to Arcata because I really wanted to speak up about climate action plan and who's going to be managing that. I have been years waiting for a climate action plan to come to fruition in Humboldt County, and I'm a little disappointed and discouraged that for whatever reason it takes much longer than it should to have an actual plan. But I just want to say right now, we know what we need to do now. And yes, let's find a manager and some entity to have that manager work through. And I am in agreement with Supervisor Madrone that incentives are really vitally important to get people to buy in. So what I just really want to propose is all this staffing and what you're talking about. I totally appreciate what you do, and I can't say enough how I don't want to have to do that. But as a public member who really cares about this community and about climate, go forward with this bureaucratic setup and staffing and funding. Oh, that's the one thing. Unrestricted funds, you say some interest accrues. I would hope that whatever interest is accruing is not from monies invested in climate-destroying agencies. So I hope you have some sort of policy on investments in that regard, because that would be very bizarre to, use funds from like fossil fuel companies to hire somebody to manage the climate in the future. So transportation is huge, but I agree other issues are important, and just don't delay and wait for somebody to come officially on board. Please try out some pilot projects or incentive things that, are short term maybe, but can show people that, hey, we're leading the way in the nation, I would hope. I always like to think Humboldt County, home of the redwood forest, the great line in that Woody Guthrie song, from the redwood forest to everywhere else. We can be in the beginning of all this and prove that we and the redwoods know how to survive a long time. So that's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to depart, but thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Well, I think it's a great opportunity for a joint powers authority to be able to step out.
Colin's got it.
Colin. Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities.
Thank you. I got an introduction. I just wanted to say that we really appreciate HCOG stepping up to this role, and especially offering some resources to make sure that as soon as the plan is adopted, that the region can really hit the ground running. Supervisor Madrone mentioned the availability of some funding hopefully in the near future, and frankly this has taken a lot longer than it should have, and we've missed a lot of funding opportunities, and it's important for us to get organized and get moving as a region as quickly as possible. So just really wanted to express appreciation for the proposal and support for moving forward. Thank you.
And thank you. Well, I think go through here again. We're at the end of this discussion item. I think there's been direction, and we can move on to the year-end report.
Okay, this is the fun part, and I couldn't resist one last year-end report before I left. but I will not belabor it too much. So, you got the highlights document. We will be publishing this. We also get it translated into Spanish and send it out. So we're working on that part. But just to kind of, sum up our year, it's not every single thing we work on, but I like to go through the highlights. And certainly the Bus Squatch promotion and the Ride Humboldt efforts. We had 31 volunteers, including our very own chair, Mike Johnson, joining us for really photo opportunities, getting all these photo assets, as our marketer likes to call them. So we work with Studio 6. They are really like kind of the premier transit marketing firm. I'm super happy that we got to support Humboldt Transit Authority in this way, and really hats off to Una for some major coordination, getting 31 people. Really, I think it was within 2 days, and all over the county. And it was a lot of coordination. She did an amazing job. And again, these photo assets we have, they certainly, are useful beyond just this marketing effort for transit. They've already kind of spruced up our website and other promotional materials. So we're happy to have participated in that. And then our website got its upgrade. And so we hope that some of you have had a chance to go play with it a little bit. It looks much more modern, and we've definitely included some of those new photos. It should be a little easier to navigate, and it's definitely more accessible than our past website. So we're really proud of that. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Keys campaign. This was this month-long campaign, social media campaign, really highlighting housing insecurity in our region. This was funded with REAP 1.0 funds, one of the sort of last projects to come out of that program. But we did, several throughout the month, several housing related posts, and it attracted over 700 video views, and we reached over about 30,000 social media users. So we had a great reach on that. It was something new and different we hadn't really done before, and I think it was a big success. Then the next thing to mention is just our continued support for active transportation and safety. This is really at the core of what we do here. So some of the things we like to highlight, Bike Month continues on, led with a wonderful community coalition, but certainly convened by HCOG. And this year we'll be doing it again in May, and we have our Civic Spark fellow Noah who will be helping lead it this year. So that's exciting that he'll get a chance to participate and bring some new ideas. We continue to provide administrative support for the Humboldt Bay Trail Fund Committee, and this fund supports improved facilities along the trails. We've often funded things like trash cans and benches. This is a donor-funded fund, and so what we do is really just provide that admin support and work with a committee that's selected, and get grant solicitations out every year, and then take input on how the trail's maintained. One of the main things that the Humboldt Bay Trail Fund supports on an ongoing basis is the Trail Stewards program. So when you see people out there cleaning up the trails, that's part of partly funded by the Humboldt Bay Trail Fund. And then HCOG staff just participated in numerous active transportation and safety related task force. We really do our best, even with the small amount of staff we have, to engage with our community and our partners and really lend our expertise whenever we can. And so this is just, partial list of things we're involved in, really doing the very best we can to make sure that we're keeping, active transportation and safety top of mind for our region. And speaking of lending our expertise, I think more and more HCOG is being asked to present at all kinds of events, which is great fun. And we've continued that. And this year we presented at the California Planning Conference, Resilient Futures in Rural Communities. They were very interested to hear about our regional transportation plan and our safe and sustainable transportation targets. Stevie actually presented on a federal grants webinar. This was related to the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant we got, so that was kind of cool. He got some nationwide exposure on that one. And then we've presented at some leadership academies throughout the years, as well as other events. So it's just been fun to kind of get out there and show what we're up to people, within and outside of our region. Then the SAFE program, which is the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies. As you know, we manage the call box program. We did manage to get in 22 new call boxes, primarily on highways 96, 169, and 36. Several of these are satellite call boxes in areas where there's just absolutely no cell reception. And so really a lifeline in those areas. And so those have been well received by the community. And then the motorists CHP supplemental patrols on Highway 96 and 36. The stats are provided there, but just the one that sticks out to me is the 224 motorist services. So that's, 224 folks stranded on the side of the road that CHP was able to give a hand to because we helped fund those extra patrols that allowed them to be out there. So happy we can contribute in that way. And then the other thing we always provide in these updates is kind of like by the numbers, how much money passed through HCOG this year. And it's kind of a big number this year, just over 17 million. And it's all kind of the normal suspects. I think the big one that's really different is this Senate Bill 125. It's this formula-based funding that came for transit, and it's flowing through HCOG, primarily going to Humboldt Transit Authority, Arcata Mad River Transit, and there's also a set aside for Yurok Tribal Transit. So we have that program. We've already received, it's 16 million total that will be coming over the next few years. We've already received 7 million of that and are getting it out. This was a program designed at the state to help the transit agencies deal with fiscal cliff. And as you saw during the Unmet Transit Needs presentation, ridership still has not bounced back to pre-COVID levels. That is true, statewide and beyond, even nationally. And I think, even ridership trends beyond our nation. So really this was some funding coming through to just help kind of stabilize the transit industry until ridership bounces back. And also realizing that we need transit to meet our climate goals. And so we can't really let it fall off and not be a part of the solution. So that's kind of the big new program that we hadn't seen before, brand new this year. And so then just kind of the breakdown of all that money that flowed through of that 17 million, over 15 went to transit. Again, half of it was from that Senate Bill 125 program. But this is funding all kinds of things, zero emission buses, operations, reduced fares, this $2 fare. These funds are helping to support that. It does support dial ride and many other safety and facility improvements. And then 1.6 million went to local streets and roads. So that's the money that flowed through HCOG for those purposes. And then we have some new grants and funds that came through as well. We have the Strategic Partnerships Grant. That was the grant we actually just added to our work program with the amendment we passed today. And then the Carbon Reduction Program. This is formula funding, and this is the one that's going to fund the Regional Zero Emission Fleet Transition Plan, which will cover everyone's jurisdiction throughout the whole region and really to meet some CARB requirements. And so we'll be supporting that with this $300,000 of funding for that, and that will start probably in February. And we're looking forward to that, and I think all the jurisdictions are looking forward to having their transition plan, which is a requirement. And then we received the Regional Planning Assistance Discretionary Grants. So this is also kicking off fairly soon, and that's the North State Hydrogen Fueling Station Analysis. So as Humboldt Transit Authority is transitioning to hydrogen buses, many other transit agencies across the North State are having similar concerns and not being able to use the battery electric buses because they do not offer the range we need in rural mountainous areas. And so really turning to hydrogen is kind of seeming to be the way it's going to go, but we need a station network to be built out in order to accomplish that. And so this study will help us explore that. And then REAP 2.0, this is the grant that funds the McKinleyville Microtransit. I think we actually got it last year. Well, we got the award letter last year, but I think funds finally started flowing this year. So it feels very new. It took a really long time. So We Are Up, which is an infill project in McKinleyville, that one, they've already received a couple reimbursement checks, and we're actually waiting. We've received confirmation they're going to offer an advance for the McKinleyville Microtransit. So we've received notice that the advance is approved. approved, but we haven't seen the actual dollars. So that's when we know we can start. And HTA is ready to, as soon as they have those funds in place, they're really looking forward to launching the McKinleyville Microtransit. And one of the things we put in the budget for that was also money for Studio 6, the marketing agency, to really do like a full court press on marketing that transit program. So it won't just be kind of like a small launch. It will be the appropriate large fanfare to go with it. So I think that'll be really useful. And then a really big milestone, and kudos to Una for managing this program for the last 4 years, I think it's been, the whole time I've been here. So REAP 1.0 really wrapped up actually this month. This is kind of the end of it. So we have sent out money to all kinds of, projects. We had the art program where we had sort of the multimedia catalog related to housing developed, and 300,000 of these funds coming through REAP actually funded the creation of the Regional Climate Action Plan, supported the consultant work and staff work on that. So we've kind of been at the table with that for quite a while. So very, very great accomplishment to get this wrapped up. And it was a lot of work and a lot of coordination. So really, again, kudos to Una for managing that for so many years. And then just some fun, stuff that staff's been up to. Of course, Stevie is out on educational leave, and so he's out enjoying his time in Barcelona and learning a lot that he will be bringing back actually August of 2025. Amy headed to Hawaii for a vacation recently and enjoyed her time there. And Una spent last Christmas, New Year's season in Cuba learning salsa, and that was great fun for all of us to get to hear about. And in February, I went to Nepal, which is where I served in the Peace Corps. So I hadn't been back in 20 years. So that was really a fun trip. And then some big changes on the horizon. We're so happy to welcome Noah as our Civic Spark Fellow. He'll be with us the whole year. Again, working on the safe and sustainable transportation targets, really helping us. This is going to be great because it's already time to launch into the next regional transportation plan update. One thing we've just lacked capacity to do is really hone in on those safe and sustainable transportation targets and figure out, are they working? How are we tracking them? So he's really doing the deep dive into that. So I think that'll be extremely beneficial launching into the next update. And then I'm headed out. This is my very last meeting. So that's it for our highlights. But I would be happy to take any comments. Super fun. We had a good year.
$17 million dispersed through the communities. Every agency here had an opportunity to partake of that, and that's a big deal. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other comments on, well, with that, impressive. Yes. We can reconvene as the HCOG board by a motion, and we will at that same time pass the PAC recommendations. If we can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So we have one last board action item.
Goes on. Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty just kind of administrative, but we need to do it because it's important to get all of our ducks in a row here. So this is a specific motion we need so that we can show proper documentation to Coast Central, which, by the way, just to comment on our last commenter who was worried where our money is gathering interest from, all of our money is at Coast Central, and the only thing we have is really savings accounts there. So there's not any other investments going on, but we do bank with Coast Central, and we do have a credit cards with Coast Central. So what this motion is asking for is to basically make Debbie the primary signer, and we want to do that because you've just appointed her interim director starting on the 21st. Then she can be primary and transfer the primary over to the permanent ED when they arrive, and then Amy's account will stay will stay put. So that's our strategy there. And then Amy will end up, my credit card will get canceled, and then Amy will end up with a higher limit one since there won't be 2 cards for a while. So it's just, totally administrative, but we need to get it done so we can show Coast Central that you all approved it, and we can get that going.
Well, that sounds pretty straightforward. Any questions, comments? None. So trying to find the...
Here, I have it. I move that the HCOG board authorize the HCOG interim executive director, Debbie Egger, effective December 21st, 2024, as the primary signatory on all Coast Central credit union accounts, and to authorize the closing of Elizabeth Burke's business credit card, and to transfer the available credit of that card to Amy Everyone's business credit card.
Second.
So for this one, do we need a roll call for the bank's? Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passed. So we are at staff and PAC member reports with, again.
I promise it's almost over. So one thing I wanted to call your attention to, I think you each have at your seats a flyer about upcoming community workshops. So one of the things HCOG is doing is supporting the city of Arcata through some Safe Routes to School work. So there will be opportunities to join in, and they're all listed here on your flyer, but this is really looking at Safe Routes to School for the Fuente Nueva Charter School in Arcata on Janes Road. So as you can see on your flyer, there's times you can observe at school pickup or drop off, and join the neighborhood walk audit, or join the community workshop. So just wanted to call your attention to that. They should be really good events. And then I wanted to also just mention, we did not have a TAC meeting this month. The TAC meeting was actually scheduled on the same day as the earthquake. So just, that was in the morning. The TAC meeting would have been in the afternoon. We just didn't seem prudent to have everybody traveling in. So just to let you know, that did not occur this month. So I had no last TAC meeting, which is why I talked extra here, because I didn't get the chance. But they will, their January meeting is also canceled because it falls on the 2nd. So we always have a hard time getting a quorum at the first January meeting, but they'll be back on board in February. They have the items from last meeting. They'll also have some new items, so that'll be coming your way. And then finally, just thank you all so much. It has been an absolute pleasure the last 4 years, and I just can't say thank you enough to all of you. And I know that for most of you, it's absolute volunteer position. So your diligence in showing up, it makes our work so much easier. That again, you see the numbers, we're passing a lot of money through here. It's really important work for our communities. And, even sometimes when there's just a consent agenda, it's, maybe $1 million on the table to get to some jurisdiction that needs it. So I just appreciate, everyone always, being engaged, coming to the meetings, showing up, and, providing good direction. And then also just a tremendously huge thanks to the HCOG staff, because they really are among the very best in Humboldt County, and you're very, very lucky to have them. So I know it's going to be in good hands, and I'm not worried at all. And I'm just looking forward to continuing to collaborate with HCOG in my new role, and getting to see all the great things that are to come for HCOG. So thank you for this wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
Thank you for your diligence and for what you've done. Caltrans reports.
I believe that I've been texting with project manager Jeff Pimentel, and he was planning to call in, but I don't see him yet, so he might join and want to add on to this. But just a quick update on the Indianola Interchange project. All columns, supported embankment columns, have been installed. The piles for the bridge abatements have also been installed. The contractor is now working on forming the bridge abutments, and the work will continue on the abutments, weather permitting. And as of now, we're currently still on track for December 2025 completion. So that's all I have. The milestone reports that have been included in the board packages monthly, I don't know if I said this before, but we're now going to be producing those on a quarterly basis, just because the projects don't progress enough. But so sorry if I said that last time, but that's why you're not seeing one this month.
thank you. And that's nice to hear that that's progressing so well. And I go to cash and carry monthly, and I can see the movement. Sometimes feel the movement. So now we come to PAC and board member reports, and I just wanted to say something first about, I've never been involved in hiring somebody that I was never in the same room with them for like 4 months. And it seemed that's the way your position worked out. And you've done a great job in that. And we kept in communication then. We still keep in communication now. And you've been a wonderful executive director. You handle 8 personalities and ways of doing things and bring us all to a conclusion to benefit all our communities. When you came along, all of a sudden they started throwing more housing work at HCOG than we had before. And you took that in stride, the REAP grants, and then you developed a way for the community development departments to get together and collaborate. And the Earth Center down, that came about with advocacy from HCOG and participation and assistance in grant writing. And the call box, you brought that up here, but it's been going on for a lot longer than what we just saw today. The upgrade, getting the satellite boxes, that started 2 or 3 years ago, and you've brought it to fruition. And again, the public and the member agencies in HCOG and just benefited from that. And you saw that in the list of the roadside assistance. And then all the public outreach you've done, especially going out. You came to little old Fortuna's chamber meeting, but and you do that, or you do a large public meeting in Eureka, but it's all part, and you step out and do it. That's a great thing. And the Ride Humboldt, I know that you didn't develop that, but you helped promote it, and it's a great thing. And along with, what's the other, the RCX, the line all the way down into Ukiah, where you can catch all the way down into Marin County, and I don't know how far it goes. But you've been a wonderful executive director, a cheerleader, a staff supporter. There's a couple of times you had to deal with some personnel situations, but those road bumps come along, and you weathered those too. So I just want to say thank you for that and for what you've done. And I think Councilmember Atkins Salazar has something to say too.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Johnson. And thank you for summarizing all of Beth's accomplishments, or some, not all of them, but some of them. So thank you. And I just wanted to thank you and say, I joined the board 4 years ago, right after Beth was hired. And so we kind of had a bond because we were both learning, and she was really gracious. And this agenda and understanding everything can be a little bit overwhelming at first. So I appreciated your patience and just also that you're thoughtful and dynamic leadership. So on behalf of the board, we just got you a card and a small token of our appreciation to say thank you.
It's easy to pull it all off. About being a leader, everyone else does all the work. Just get to watch everybody else also report. So thank you so much for those kind words and for all of it.
Well, thank you for what you've done and been and what you're going to do, because I am an RCEA CCA customer. But is there any other board or PAC member reports? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Beth, a lot of good things have been said, but I will say that I think one of the really true signs of a leader is somebody who can nourish their staff, nourish and treat them as coworkers. Literally, not just staff, but coworkers, and really embrace what they could be and support that. That is just, you don't find that all the time in this world. You're not about top down, you're about really supporting that whole team effort. And I just want to acknowledge you for that and thank you.
Yes. Pack Member Arroyo.
Thank you. I always have a report. And this one, even though I will add on to the great words about Beth, but it's also about transit. But I'll start with the Beth comments. I was fortunate to be able to be part of the hiring committee to hire Beth away from HCOG with my RCEA hat on. But what a so Skip and I are fortunate that we get to work with Beth in this RCEA capacity as well. But great talent to bring to another really important organization locally, and it's going to be a joy to continue to work with you. And I will echo that I've also heard just so much faith in the other staff that you have worked with and helped to cultivate. I know they're all strong on their own as well, but you've also helped to lead them in a good direction. And I think this organization's in very good hands. I do have a couple transit-related updates. One of them is that Humboldt Transit Authority has entered into an agreement with a hydrogen fueler for temporary fueling solutions. So hydrogen fueling is sometimes hard to establish, especially in a rural area. So we're grateful to have that. Our hydrogen bus will be arriving early in 2025. We haven't really been promoting the North State Express yet until very recently. That promotion is kicking off. So earlier we heard that there were about 600 riders so far for that route that connects all the way to ultimately connects to Ukiah and then south to the Bay Area, or to Mendocino County, which gets folks to Point South. But that is a larger network that's being built out, and now the promotion is active, so we should see even more ridership with that and more people knowing about it. It had sort of a soft launch as we were working on a new system, so now it's kicked off fully. If you didn't catch this in the last couple months, our fares have become more consistent across all systems, so that's really good for riders. Excuse me, my throat is really letting me down here. But that'll help with just ongoing consistency. And then lastly, I'm sure you all want to put this on your calendars. And if you're like me, your July calendar is already filling up, weirdly enough. So we're going to be the host again for the North State Transit Symposium, which will be July 15th through 17th, 2025 at the Fortuna River Lodge, which is served by a transit stop. So I know that Joanne left, but I'm sure she will want to go to that and she'll be able to take the bus there. So again, that's July 15th through 17th. It'll be great. The last one that we held here a couple of years ago, really phenomenal turnout. People are so impressed with Humboldt's transit situation, and we're leaders in the whole north part of the state. And folks will be coming here to learn from us and to share with us and for us to learn from them. And it'll be awesome. So I encourage you all to go if you can.
Thank you. Any others? Well, I think we've come to the end of our agenda. Oh, is there?
We do have a quick closed session with our talent recruitment, so it shouldn't take long, but we do have them on the line.
I was going to.
No, we can stay here.
No, I know. I was going to go tell him to
please
turn
tell
the
him,
cameras off.
Yeah.
And I was going to adjourn to closed session.
Perfect.
so-
Sorry, we're all just jumping in. Sorry,
We are adjourned to closed session.
Skip had a comment, folks.
Oh,
Brief. I just wanted to comment that Caltrans and Jeff held another public engagement meeting last night, and those will continue. I hope they're getting what they need. Big project. And thank you, Beth.
To report out from our closed session, we have nothing to report at this time. No action was taken, and our next scheduled Humboldt County Association of Governments Board meeting is January 16th. Thank you. We are adjourned.